Welcome to Eerie Trail, where forgotten roads, haunted silence, and long shadows tell stories no one else dares to remember. If you're drawn to the strange, the lost, and the unsettling, you're in the right place. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that don't just scare, they stay with you. Got it. Here's your full horror story based on the title Texas. There's a stretch of highway 287 that cuts straight through the desolate skin of North Texas, flat and blistered like something that never quite healed right, past Wichita Falls. Before you hit Vernon, there's a 20-mile patch of road that locals only talk about when they're drunk or dying, and never in daylight. You won't find anything marked on a map, no towns, no attractions, just barbed wire fencing oil, derricks leaning like crooked teeth, and a forgotten exit ramp with no signs and no purpose. The kind of place you pass by at 85 miles an hour without a second thought, unless your car breaks down. That's what happened to Russell Clay. He was heading west from Dallas, chasing nothing in particular. He just lost his job at a small-time insurance firm after mouthing off to his manager during a Christmas party, and his girlfriend had packed up and gone back to her parents in Austin. He wasn't the type to sit still when things fell apart. He'd filled the tank of his silver Honda Accord and pointed it west with the windows down and the music up loud, trying to outrun a life he no longer wanted. The car started coughing just after dusk. At first, it was subtle, a hiccup in the engine, a small jolt in the steering wheel. But by the time he saw the crooked wooden sign that simply read, "Service 1 mile," it was sputtering like an old man trying to catch his breath. There was no GPS signal, no cell reception, and no other cars in sight. Just the endless prairie and a sky the color of bruises. The exit ramp appeared like an afterthought, barely paved, with a cracked shoulder and tufts of dry grass poking through. The headlights caught a thin, rusted sign with flaking red letters. Borough, that was it. No population number, no welcome message. Just that name. Russell turned in, the car wheezing like a dying animal. The road narrowed into gravel, then dirt, and eventually it spilled him into what might have once been a town square. 4 or 5 dilapidated buildings hunched together like old men sharing a secret. A gas station stood at the center, its neon sign flickering. Briggs Fuel and Supply, it said, though half the letters were missing. Next to it, a diner with curtains drawn tight, a barber shop, a post office with busted windows. Not a single light. In any of them, the engine died completely just as Russell pulled up beside the first pump. He climbed out and tried the door to the gas station. Locked. He looked around. The night was still, too still. No wind. No insects. Just a silence thick enough to choke on. That's when he saw the old man sitting in the shadows by the stations. Sidewall. He wore overalls, boots stained black with oil or blood, and a trucker's cap pulled low over sunken eyes. He wasn't smoking, wasn't drinking, just sitting there with his hands clasped in his lap like he'd been waiting. "You need help?" the man asked, his voice dry as sawdust. "My car broke down," Russell said. "Thought I'd make it to Vernon. You know where I can get a mechanic?" The man smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Ain't been no mechanics here since '82. Russell laughed nervously. "Well, someone must have a phone. Or at least jumper cables." The man gestured behind him. "You could try the diner. Ms. Ellen might still be in there. She don't talk much, but she sees to things. Keeps this place together." Russell hesitated. The windows were completely dark. But when he looked again, one of the curtains twitched. Someone was definitely watching. He walked across the lot, crunching gravel underfoot, and pushed the diner door open. A bell chimed above him, sharp and shrill. The inside smelled like old grease and something faintly metallic. A single overhead bulb flickered weakly, casting long shadows. The booths were covered in a thin layer of dust, except for one near the back where a cup of coffee steamed. Untouched. Behind the counter stood a woman in a faded waitress uniform, her hair done up in tight gray curls. Her face was heavy with time, but her eyes were alert, too alert. "You hungry?" she asked. "No, my car broke down." "I was told you might be able to help." "You want help?" she asked. "Eat something first." Russell opened his mouth to argue, but something about her tone stilled him. He sat at the counter. She slid him a plate of fried eggs and grits. The eggs were rubbery, the grits congealed. Still, he took a bite. It tasted like nothing. The woman stared at him without blinking. "You feel it yet?" "Feel what?" "The place," she said. "This town. Burro don't let go once it gets a taste." Russell set the fork down. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You came here on your own 2 feet, didn't you?" she asked. "Same as the others. Thought you could leave things behind. Thought Texas was big enough to swallow your mess. But out here, between the towns, there's places that don't forget." Russell stood up. "Okay, look. I just need to get back on the road. Can I borrow a phone?" She shook her head. "There's no road back. Not anymore." He left. Walked out into the night. The old man was gone. The gas station was now boarded up like it had been closed for years. He ran to his car. The tires were slashed. The windshield cracked like a spider's web. Something was moving in the fields beyond the square, low to the ground, fast. He heard the crunch of hooves or claws. A low growl, then laughter. Children's laughter, faint and cruel. He locked himself in the car. Tried his phone again. Still no signal. He curled into the back seat and waited for morning, convinced it was just a nightmare. Some weird backwoods dream, but morning never came. The sky lightened, sure, but the sun never rose. A gray, colorless haze settled over the town like dust. On a coffin, the buildings looked more rotten now. The people, what few there were, watched him from behind curtains. None came out. None spoke. And every time he tried to leave Burro, the road just curved back into itself, like the town was a loop stitched tight. Days passed, or something like days. He stopped counting. He stopped eating. His reflection in the diner's window grew thinner, hollower, until one day there was no reflection at all. He began to see them, the others. They moved under the diner's floorboards, crawled across the ceilings. Whispers bled through the walls like oil. They called him by name. They asked him questions he didn't understand. And always, they laughed out. The last time someone saw Russell Clay, really saw him, was a month later, when a couple from Abilene swore they spotted a man on the side of Highway 287 near that same unmarked exit, waving for help. By the time they turned around, he was gone. They say if you stop near Burro, if you take that wrong turn, you might see a figure sitting by the gas station, eyes sunken, skin thin as parchment. Sometimes it's an old man. Sometimes it's a young one, always watching, always waiting. And if you're stupid enough to get out of your car, well, Texas is big enough to forget you. And Burro's always hungry. He came back to Texas because something in his blood pulled him. Eli Shepard hadn't set foot in the state since he was 19, when he left for Oregon with nothing but a duffel bag, a busted skateboard, and a deep, ugly ache he couldn't name. His father was already long dead by then, crushed beneath a tractor in a field outside. Bowie. His mother drank herself into a permanent daze before Eli hit 17. The state had coughed him out, used up and brittle, and he promised he'd never crawl back. But promises are brittle things, especially when Texas calls you home in a whisper no one else can hear. He returned in the middle of summer, mid-July, when the heat clings to your back like a wet dog and the cicadas scream like they know something's wrong. The sun beat down hard on his rental car as he drove aimlessly west on 114, past scorched fields and decaying gas stations, not quite sure where he was going until he saw the sign. Welcome to Coleswich Pop, 241. He nearly drove past it. There was no memory of the name. No reason he should stop. But he did. There was a gas station just past the sign. A one-pump relic with a dusty awning and a Coke machine older than Eli. The pump was covered in a tarp. No lights, no sound. But something about the place felt familiar in a way that made his skin tighten. He pulled over anyway. The town itself was barely a breath, a single intersection, 3 boarded-up storefronts, a sun-faded church with a broken bell. Across the way was a general store with a crooked porch. The bell above the door rang when he stepped inside. No one came out to greet him. The air smelled of old tobacco and cedar. Shelves were half-stocked with canned goods and dusty light bulbs. A wall of photographs lined the back near the cooler. Sepia-toned snapshots of families, schoolchildren, hunting trips. Eli paused at one in the middle. A black and white photo of a man with dark, sunken eyes and a face too much like his own. There was no date. Just a hand-scrawled label underneath. Jonas Shepard Aretiawarren stepped back. The name shouldn't have meant anything. He had no Uncle Jonas, no cousin. But there was something ancient in the name, like it was buried in his spine, waiting. Can I help you, hon? The voice came from a woman behind the counter. Mid-60s, heavy-set, her gray hair piled in a bun. She hadn't been there when he walked in, he was sure of it. Her nametag read Miriam. I'm just passing through, Eli said. Thought I'd grab a bottle of water. Didn't mean to snoop. You're not snooping, Miriam said. Her eyes never blinked. You're remembering. Eli stared at her. I've never been here before. She smiled sadly. That's what they all say. First time's just a loop back to where it started. He left without buying anything. Got back in the car. When he looked in the mirror, the gas station was gone. Just open prairie. No sign, no town, no Coleswich, but he hadn't moved. He drove 20 more minutes west before the road bent and dropped him back into the same town. Same pump, same leaning church, same crooked porch. He got out, yelled into the silence. Where the hell am I? And from inside the general store, Miriam answered, without opening the door, without showing herself, You're home, Eli. He didn't sleep that night. Parked on the side of the church where the trees bent unnaturally toward the roof, as if listening for something buried underneath. He saw shadows moving past the windows even though the building looked condemned. Heard the organ play once, just a single long, off-key note, though he swore it had no power. At 3:17 a.m., someone knocked on his window. Not tapped. Knocked. Firm. 3 times. He looked out and saw nothing. By morning, the rental car was dead. Battery drained. Keys missing. His phone wouldn't turn on. There were no birds in the trees, no bugs in the air, no sounds at all except the endless wind dragging itself over the dirt. The church doors were open now. He stepped inside. The pews were full. Every one of them held a figure, not moving, not breathing. Some were skeletons in ragged Sunday best. Some were mummified, lips curled back in a silent hymn. Some were fresher, faces half preserved. Frozen in fear or awe. At the pulpit stood the man from the photograph. Jonas Shepard. Eli. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The man smiled, and when he opened his mouth, there was only ash pouring out, falling in soft black flakes. Welcome back, Jonas said, voice dry as paper. You're right on time. Eli tried to run, but his feet refused. The air thickened. He stumbled back outside, only to find the town changed. The sky had gone gray. The road behind him was gone. replaced by thorny brush and twisted black trees that hadn't been there yesterday. The townsfolk were waking now, from the barber shop, from behind the church, from the cellar beneath the general store. They walked, without expression, dragging something behind them, long iron rods, meat hooks, sacks that twitched and moaned. Miriam stood beside them, hands folded. The shepherds always return, always bring the blood with them. Eli backed toward the prairie, but it never got closer. The town just seemed to stretch with him, an endless reflection. He fell to his knees, screaming, and somewhere deep beneath the church, something answered. A low, wet growl. They took him that night. No one saw. No one came looking. But sometimes, when the heat rises off the highway just right and you pass through certain back roads west of Dallas, you'll see a sign that wasn't there before. Welcome to Coleswitch Pop 242, and if you stop just for gas, just for a minute, someone will be waiting on the porch. A man with tired eyes and a mouth full of ash. And he'll say, "You're just in time." Everyone always warned that Texas was too big for ghosts to stay put. That spirits out here didn't linger in neat little Victorian mansions or haunted graveyards like in other places. No, in Texas, the dead wandered, got blown loose like tumbleweeds scattered across the highways, the oil fields, the canyons. You didn't chase them. You didn't try to pin them down. And if you heard them calling from the dark, you didn't answer. Raylene Delaney had heard the stories her whole life, growing up in the piney woods near Huntsville. Her grandmother called it the whisper in the trees and kept a salt line across every windowsill, every doorway, and around the trunk of every pine tree taller than a man. Her mama was more practical, just made sure the truck never ran low on gas, especially after dark. But Raylene? She didn't believe in stories. She left for Houston when she was 21, spent 10 years working corporate security for tech companies, and never once looked back until she got the call. Her brother Sam was dead, found in the woods just outside the old family house. No sign of trauma, no drugs, no wounds, no animals. Just lying there in the pine needles like he'd fallen asleep. Raylene hadn't seen him in 4 years. He'd stayed behind after their mother passed, said he felt something wasn't done. The last time they spoke, he sounded like a man slowly unthreading at the edges. He mentioned voices in the trees, lights in the fog. Said he'd found something in the dirt behind the house. Said it was watching him. She assumed it was grief and maybe a little whiskey. But now he was dead. The house was exactly as she remembered. Creaking porch, paint peeled off like old sunburn, woods pressing in tight from all sides. The air smelled like mildew and pine sap. It was almost suffocating. The sheriff had left a note on the kitchen table. Basic summary. Contact information, a business card for the funeral home. Sorry for your loss, scribbled in blue pen. Nothing else. Raylene stayed one night. That was all she intended. Just long enough to pack what she wanted, sign the paperwork, and head back to Houston. But the house had other plans. The first night, the lights flickered. She blamed the wiring. The second night, she heard someone walking on the porch around 3:12 a.m. heavy boots, crunching leaves. When she looked outside, there was nothing but the dense line of trees, unmoving. The third night, she saw Sam. Not in a dream. She didn't think so. At least, she'd fallen asleep in the living room with the TV on static. When she opened her eyes, he was sitting in the recliner across from her. Pale, dirty, wearing the same Carhartt jacket he'd always worn. His eyes were black. Not shadowed black, like something scooped out his pupils and kept going. He said nothing, just watched her. For maybe 5 seconds. Then he opened his mouth, and the sound that came out was not his voice. It was a gurgling moan, like wind caught in a flooded well. And behind it, other voices. A chorus. male and female, young and old. 1,000 dead tongues trying to fit through one ruined mouth. Then he vanished. Raylene didn't scream, didn't cry. She packed her bag, locked the door behind her, and drove straight down Farm Road 247 toward the highway. But the highway never came. She drove for an hour. Then, too, saw no cars. No signs, just more trees, more roads looping back onto themselves. Her phone showed no signal. The GPS pulsed and spun like it didn't know where it was. She turned back toward the house. It was waiting for her. The front door already open. Inside, everything had changed. The salt lines her grandmother once kept were disturbed, scattered, broken, smeared. The attic door was open now, even though she hadn't touched it. Something moved up there. She should have left again, driven until the wheels fell off. But something in her gut, something raw and angry, needed to know what had happened to Sam. She climbed the attic stairs with a flashlight and a kitchen knife. At the top. The light flickered once, then died. But the air was colder, sharper, and in the far corner of the attic was a hole, small, round, like a well that had no business being in an attic. It pulsed. Not with water, with sound. She heard voices, Sam's voice, her mother's voice, her own voice. Help me, Ray. Come. See, it's so dark. She leaned closer, and something grabbed her, not physically, but inside. Like fingers wrapped around her heart and pulled her forward. She fell. There was no bottom. Just darkness and pressure and heat and the endless whispering of 1,000 broken voices. People who'd wandered these woods, stopped on back roads, stepped into houses that looked abandoned but weren't. Texas ghosts. The ones too big to stay in graves. The ones that fed on grief and memory. The ones that wandered. She woke in the backyard. The morning sun was weak and gray. Her shirt was torn. Her hands were covered in pine needles. The house behind her was silent, but now she saw them in the trees, shapes, dozens of them, watching, and Sam's voice in her head, quiet as a breath. You let them in, Ray. You opened the door. You came back. She tried to leave again. She walked the road until her legs gave out. She woke in the house. Again. It happened 5 more times. Each time she left, she woke up in a new room, the kitchen, the attic, the porch. Her phone always dead. The road's always gone. On the 7th day, she found the sheriff's cruiser parked outside. She ran to it, slammed on the window. But when the door opened, it wasn't the sheriff inside. It was Sam. Still pale, still ruined, but smiling now. You get it now, he said. Don't you? Raylene backed away. This isn't a haunting, he said. This is Texas. It doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. You bring your ghosts with you. You feed them. And now they're yours. She tried to scream, but her throat was dry. You came back, he said, stepping out of the cruiser. That's all it takes. And then he was gone. The cruiser was gone. The trees whispered her name. She lives there now. If you drive through the piney woods and take a wrong turn on a foggy road near dusk, you might find the old Delaney house still standing. You might see a woman in the attic window, staring out with eyes like black glass. You might hear her voice in the trees, and if you answer, well, that's your mistake. Texas doesn't need haunted houses. The land is the haunting thing.